Welcome to today's episode of the Law of Self-Defense. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. I am, of course, attorney Andrew Branca for Law of Self-Defense. Thank you. Thank you. That is very, very kind of all of you. Let's make sure that we're streaming in all the places that we need to be streaming. Let's see. We are this will be a two-part show. So the first part of the show is open access. We're going to do a follow-up on yesterday's show about Burna pistols and Burna ammunition. I've aggregated all the Law of Self-Defense Burna coverage over at lawofselfdefense.com/Burna. In fact, I think I made a little banner here for that purpose. Let me see. Yes, right there. So if you'd like to catch our Burna coverage, we've done two pieces on them. One a couple of years ago in 2021 and one just yesterday. You can always find those at lawofselfdefense.com/Burna. So we'll be doing a follow-up to yesterday's show, and then we'll get to the main topic of today's show, which is waiting too long to use force in self-defense. And I have a couple of use of force videos involving law enforcement that illustrate this concept, both with unfortunate results. One of them is truly tragic results. We'll share both those videos with you. And of course, an important part of sharing those videos with our Law of Self-Defense members is because it documents for a prospective future court, a prospective future jury, that the Law of Self-Defense member is informed on the dangers of waiting too long to defend themselves, understands the risks because they've seen the risks incurred and the consequences. And because our members can document this kind of specialized knowledge not readily known to the common person, because our members can document this both because they logged in and commented on today's show as it occurred, or they watched the replay and did the same. They also get the transcript of the show. We have a transcript for every show just for our members that they can download and save to document their acquisition of the knowledge shared in today's show, which is essential, critical to being able to get that specialized knowledge admitted to a court, shown to a jury, so the jury can understand, contrary to the prosecutor's arguments, why your decisions in self-defense were reasonable decisions and therefore lawful. So the Burna follow-up part of today's show will be open access. Once we get to the videos illustrating waiting too long for self-defense, in both those videos, people die. Deadly force is used with deadly consequence. And so we don't show those on open access shows because we just get them monetized. So at that point, once we finish the Burna follow-up, the open access streams will be ended and it will become only a members only show. If you're a Law of Self-Defense member, don't go anywhere when that happens. The show will continue with you. If you're not yet a Law of Self-Defense member, I have to ask you why, because it's dirt cheap. You can become a trial member for only 99 cents for a 2-week trial. 99 cents, folks. And it's a 200% money back guarantee. It's a negative risk opportunity after the 2 weeks. If you stay a member, it's still only about 30 cents a day, less than $10 a month. And you have unlimited access for this trial period to all our members only content, including the second half of today's show. So you could sign up for this right now. Open up another tab in your browser, lawofselfdefense.com/trial. All right, folks. So with that introduction out of the way, let me go ahead and launch the formal start of today's show. And I should mention another benefit of being a Law of Self-Defense member, beyond the documentation, the transcript, the unlimited access to all our members-only content, like the second half of today's show, is it's only the Law of Self-Defense members in the member stream, in the member chat, who get their comments and questions addressed by me. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble or Twitter, that's fine, but I won't see any questions or comments that you put forward in today's show. We just don't see those. Let me see if we're actually streaming on Rumble. And we are. All right. So first, the first half of today's show, the open access part, is a follow-up on Byrna. Good old Byrna. So yesterday, I did this show entitled Another Bad Product Idea from Burna, ? And it references these 12-gauge shotgun shells that you can purchase from them. Some of Byrna's products are pistols that fire either kinetic rounds or a combination pepper spray, CS gas rounds. Also rifles that appear very realistic looking. The pistols look just like a 9mm pistol, but perhaps for the color of the pistols. They do come in different colors, as I talked about yesterday. That said, I would note, see if I have this available. I would note that although the Burna pistols come in many colors, so do real pistols. These are a picture that was sent to me by a Law Self-Defense member from a recent gun show. These are real pistols in a wide variety of colors. So just because a gun's an unusual color does not mean it's not a real gun. Does not mean it's not a real gun. So the main issues I raised with this yesterday was with respect to this 12-gauge ammunition, which is intended to be fired from a real shotgun, like a Remington 870 or a Mossberg, or really any pump shotgun. Apparently, they don't work well in semi-automatics. They don't have the power to cycle the semi-automatic, but they're intended for use in a real shotgun that would also fire real lethal shotgun shells. Now, this doesn't fire the pepper spray OC CS mixed gas. This is just looks like a plastic kinetic round. But my concern, of course, is that you'll think you have one of these purportedly less lethal rounds in your shotgun, but you'll unintentionally have an actual shotgun shell. So you'll unintentionally be using deadly force when you thought you were only using less deadly force. And that's a guaranteed formula for an involuntary manslaughter conviction, folks. So my concern is mixing up the ammo, essentially, especially since it's being fired through a device that is a real firearm, not something that looks distinctly different from a real firearm. My previous concerns with Burna has been with the pistols that they sell, which look exactly like a real pistol. It looks exactly like a 9mm pistol. It has a thumb safety. It has a trigger guard. I mean, it's really indistinguishable. Even to people knowledgeable about firearms, especially in the stress of a moment, it's indistinguishable from a real pistol. So not only do I have concerns that the user might think they're holding a Burna, but actually be holding a 9mm pistol, much like Kim Potter thought she was holding a taser, but was actually holding a real 9mm pistol, killed Dante Wright, went to jail for it on a manslaughter conviction. I think wrongfully, but nevertheless, that's what happened. And in any case, obviously a tragic unintended result, the death of Dante Wright. But I'm also concerned that observers of a user of a Burna pistol that appears to be just a 9mm pistol would perceive a use of deadly force under circumstances where deadly force might not be warranted, as the Burna is intended to be used where deadly force might not be warranted as a less lethal tool. And I'm worried about third parties observing the wielding of the Burna might reasonably perceive the wielding of a deadly force instrument when deadly force would not be privileged, and decide to intervene to stop that use of apparently unlawful deadly force. So those are the main high points of yesterday's show. Again, you can access yesterday's show. At least if you're a Law of Self-Defense member, you can access yesterday's show by pointing your browser to lawofselfdefense.com/Burna. That's where we have yesterday's Burna show and the show from a couple of years ago as well. Law Self-Defense members sent me a couple of links about exactly that kind of concern, that others watching you wield a Burna pistol might believe you're wielding a real gun and respond with their own deadly force. And in particular, it touches upon this case here. Let me zoom this in. This is from 2022. So just last spring, and a year after I wrote my first Byrna post about my concerns about their pistol. Let's step through this. The family of Kayla Gary was joined by their attorney, Justin Bamberg, on Wednesday morning to talk about what happened on Saturday night, when Gary, a woman, was shot and killed by a Lawrence County Sheriff's Office deputy. Gary's family was allowed to view the body cam footage, and lawyer Bamberg commended the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office and SLED, so this would be the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, for their transparency. It's a rarity to get that from law enforcement, said Attorney Bamberg. According to Attorney Bamberg, Gary, the victim here, the woman, called 911 and reported that the house was being burglarized. Now, it hasn't said this yet, but Kayla Gary had serious mental issues. She'd just been released from a mental institution about a week prior. She apparently had a bad case of schizophrenia, which induces psychosis. You imagine things happening that are not happening. Her family knew she was in a bad way mentally. They were trying to get her back into the institution. But as many of you know, mental health support in many states is not great, and apparently wasn't great here. But in any case, she was back home. She had a psychotic event. She believed the home was being burglarized, and she called 911 to report that the home was being burglarized. So law enforcement is responding to a burglary in progress, which means a guns out response, because it could turn into a kidnapping scenario where the burglars are bunkered down inside the home with the residents, whoever called 911. So that's what the cops would have a reasonable expectation is going on. The family lawyer said the burglar, didn't exist and no one was breaking into the house. Now, he also says she was calm and she was peaceful, but it doesn't seem that way. Certainly wouldn't seem that way to the deputies, because the news report continues. When deputies arrived, Kayla Gile was holding a long, sharp object. Okay. So it would be perceived as a kind of knife, right? Some kind of contact weapon capable of inflicting death or serious bodily injury, but you'd have to be in proximity for it to do that. So as long as you maintain distance, in theory, she's not yet an imminent deadly force threat. But then when she was told to put that object down, she pulled out a projectile device that looked like a firearm. The family lawyer said the device was made to look, feel, and be perceived as a real firearm. Now, this article doesn't use the term Burna here, but I do have a little bit of news video because the attorney gave a brief presentation talk to the media. So let's watch this from a local news report.
The Lawrence County Sheriff's Office says 26-year-old Kayla Gary was shot and killed by a deputy Saturday night. A family attorney says Kayla was the one who called 911
to report that the house was being burglarized. And who was the burglar? It was a person who didn't exist.
Kayla's family says she had schizophrenia. Justin Bamberg says body camera footage shows Kayla carrying a long, sharp object as she meets the first deputy in the yard. As the deputy yells at her to drop it,
she pulls out a projectile device that's manufactured, it's made, it's intended to look, feel, operate, and be perceived as a real-life firearm.
Bamberg says body camera footage shows deputies continue yelling at Kayla to drop the objects. He says it goes on to show deputies trying to tase her, then shooting her with non-lethal pellets 4 times.
She's yelling, "Kill me." She's yelling, "Kill me."
Before he says she was ultimately shot and killed.
We wish they hadn't. But after they did, they tried to help her.
Now, of course, you would expect the family lawyer to want to be suing the police department. He doesn't sound like it. He sounds actually pretty sympathetic to the deputies, probably because he's seen the body cam footage and he knows that for all the world, it looks like Kayla Gary was wielding a 9mm pistol in her hand. Now, he also does not say the word Burna here in this interview. But if we look at this case that he's holding up, right here, you can just see the top edge of it there. It's a black case with an orange trim. And if we go to the Byrna website, The Byrna pistol is delivered in a black case. See if I can zoom in here. With the same kind of orange trim. You can see it here on the edge of the case. So I think it's reasonable, also given the verbal description of the device that we're talking here about, a Byrna pistol. Now, I certainly don't want to suggest that Byrna's is the sole cause of this tragic event. Obviously, this woman had serious mental health issues. The officers, the deputies responding, could only respond to their reasonable perceptions of the events. I'm sharing this news story because I think it illustrates how readily this device can be misperceived by other parties as a real pistol capable of inflicting death or serious bodily injury, and responded to as a real pistol capable of inflicting death or serious bodily injury. Now, of course, I can't speak for Burna. I presume Burna would argue that, well, in this kind of case, it was the mental illness that killed her. A reasonable person would not have approached deputies with our Burna device in hand, would not have created this kind of confusion. And presumably that's all true, but we can all imagine many, many fact scenarios in which someone may be perfectly lawfully holding a Burna in their hand. Perhaps they just drove off an aggressor, and then they're observed from some side angle by a third party who thinks they're holding a gun, maybe by an officer who thinks they're holding a gun. So the person wielding the Burna doesn't know that they're presenting as a deadly force threat to some other party. But the misidentification, the misperception of the Burna as a real pistol occurs with the tragic event. So it's not just a hypothetical concern, folks. This really happened. These deputies shot this woman dead after trying non-lethal options. And after they shot her, they tried to provide care. But these deputies shot this woman dead, this severely mentally ill woman. They shot her dead in the reasonable belief that she was presenting as a deadly force threat, even though she wasn't. But they reasonably perceived she was presenting as a deadly force threat because she was wielding this device in her hand. Technically a non-lethal weapon, as described and marketed by Burna. But the deputies reasonably perceived it as a real gun. They responded accordingly. And Kayla Gary's dead. Now, not solely because Burna exists, but again, this is exactly the kind of misidentification of the device that I'm concerned about. If the device had looked like wildly not like a pistol, but was still capable of projecting OC, like a normal OC canister, right? Doesn't look anything like a pistol. Here's my OC canister. Now, my OC canister doesn't do what the Burna does. It cannot fire a inert projectile, plastic projectile, 60 feet. It doesn't fire these OC CS balls 60 feet. Why you would need less lethal force at 60 feet, I'm not sure. If someone's presenting as only a non-deadly force threat, if they're 60 feet away, it's hard to envision how they would present as an imminent danger. It's a separate question. So I don't know. I mean, the capabilities this doesn't have, I'm not sure under what fact scenario involving non-deadly force, less than lethal force, which is what the Burna is intended for, it would apply. All right, so that was the only part of today's show that will really be open access, folks. But before I shut things down, let me take a look and see if we have any questions from our Law of Self-Defense members. And if you're not a Law of Self-Defense member, now would be the time to join. 2-week trial, unlimited access to all our members-only content, including the second half of today's show for just 99 cents, folks. Try it out for 99 cents. Worst case, you don't like it. If you tell us you don't want to continue, we'll give you 200% of your money back, which isn't much. It's $1.98, but we didn't ask for much up front either. And if you stay a member, it's still only about 30 cents a day, less than $10 a month to be a Law of Self-Defense member. Open up another tab on your computer, sign up right now at lawofselfdefense.com/trial. So both you can interact with the law of self-defense community and me directly with your questions and comments in the members only chat. And let's see. So Mike had sent me two videos. The person who provided me with the link to, let me take a quick look at that. Well, that's an article. That's the one I used. Let's see if I can do a quick. I'm not seeing a second video, Mike. I'm seeing 2 links to news articles and then 1 video, which was the interview I just showed. So thank you for your effort, but I just don't see it. Hey, Steve Gosney in the member chat says there's always a graduation picture. Yeah, there's always a graduation picture. All right, so let me take a look at the member chat questions, see what we have here. And for everyone staying for the second half of the show, I want to caution up front, people die in the second half of the show. You'll see video of people killed. So if that's not to your taste, and that's the reason we do those as members only content, because I just get demonetized every time I show it on YouTube. If that's not to your taste, there's important lessons to learn here, but people do die. If that's not to your taste, the second half of the show is probably not for you. Okay, let's see. The member chat. And I have some scheduling news, law of self-defense content scheduling news for the members too. By the way, for any of you who don't know Steve Gosney is a public defender down in Florida, good personal friend of mine, certainly a friend of the law of self-defense community, and a prolific author. Many books. This is his most recent death penalty debates. Death penalty will come up in the second half of the show, actually. And you can learn all about Steve's books at stevegosney.com. I used to have all of Steve's books here on my desk so I could hold them up, but they got too heavy for my desk. There's so many different books now, but they're all excellent. I wrote the foreword to one of them. Let's see. Richard says, I need this, speaking of Byrna, as I'm very, very hesitant to consider use of deadly force unless I'm 100% certain of no other possible option. And I think that's reasonable. I think, as I said yesterday in the Burna show, there are edge cases where I think Burna might be a reasonable option. For example, if you live in a state where you can't carry a gun for personal protection, maybe that makes the Burna a reasonable option. But that doesn't address any of my concerns that it could still be mistaken for a real gun. Or, you know, let's face it, if you have children or somebody who's mentally ill in the home and they have access to it, they'll be presenting as someone with a real gun. But again, as I said yesterday, I'm not telling anyone not to purchase Burna products. If it's a good fit for you and your circumstances, well, that's a decision for you to make. I just want you to make an informed decision, aware of the risks that I perceive. Let's see, what else? Yes, we have American law courses will be starting up again soon with the fall semester. Let me see if I have a little ad here for that. American Law Courses is a subsidiary of Law of Self-Defense. It's law school level courses intended for the layman, but taught by legal professionals. We have a whole bunch of them so far. We have criminal law. We have constitutional laws currently taking place. We have property. We have evidence. We have another criminal law course being taught by Steve this fall. And we have a business law course coming up this fall as well. If you'd like to learn more about our American law courses, you can do that at lawofselfdefense.com/conlaw would be the best way, or just go to americanlawcourses.com. we'll be promoting the fall semester starting pretty soon. I believe it starts in September. So we'll be getting there pretty soon. Jeffrey says, where's Benjamin Crump? Seems like his type of case. I haven't seen the actual body camera footage of this event, but I presume it's so bad for any civil litigation that that's just not going to happen. At least civil litigation against the police. So normally that's the most desirable scenario for these plaintiffs' attorneys, because if it's the police who use the force, you can go right to federal court. It's called a Section 1983 action. Put a lot of pressure on the politicians to settle the case before you ever have to actually litigate. But it can't be insane, the facts for the plaintiff. And I expect they were insane here. But I don't know if they might have gone after Burna. They certainly seemed like he was interested in going after Burna, the way he describes the Burna pistol. Right? How does he put it? The family lawyer, Bamberg, said the device was made to look, feel, and be perceived as a real firearm. And we know that from Burna's own website and from the letter, the comment I received from their CEO in response to my 2021 critique of the Burna pistol. That part of the reason they went with that design is for deterrent effect. So it would present and be perceived as a real pistol. So to the extent that creates, I don't do civil law, folks, but to the extent that could create potential civil liability, it wouldn't surprise me if some kind of lawsuit happened. But I didn't look into it. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, Richard said 60 feet away, and my plan is to run away if possible. Yeah, so a selling point of the Byrna from Burna is that the device can fire these kinetic projectiles or these pepper spray balls as far as 60 feet. So you have range. I just don't understand how someone who's not presenting as a deadly force threat at 60 feet would be an imminent threat at all. If they have a contact weapon, they have their fists. I mean, if they have a gun, they're a deadly force threat, and presumably you'd be shooting at them. But yeah, so someone 60 feet away with something other than a gun, I'm probably trying to get away. Steven says, Steve Gosling, is there any reason at all to have a pepper spray gun that looks like a real firearm? I can think of reasons, but I can't think of many good reasons. I think some people, they may live in a state where they can't have a real gun, so they want something that resembles a real gun, because that can be legally purchased, I guess. Maybe they live in a household where other family members are gun phobic and don't want a real gun in the house, but they'll allow this. Maybe they have a moral compunction about using deadly force upon other people, so they would never acquire a real gun for self-defense, even if they were permitted to do so. So this might be, I don't know, an option for them. John asks, Andrew, is there not a number of laws requiring that a non-firearm be painted by the muzzle with orange paint? Byrna actually addresses this on their website. And I believe their answer is that they don't have to do that because they're not marketing it as a toy. Oh, but now I don't see it here. I thought there was a bigger FAQ. I thought I saw a lengthier FAQ yesterday. Maybe here? Well, I thought I saw yesterday on the website that they addressed that question and said we don't have to put the orange tip on the gun because it's not a toy. It's not intended for children. I don't know if that's a law or not, folks. I don't cover that area of the law. Let's see. I actually don't know what the Byrna costs. There must be a price here. So for the pistol product, intended for self-defense. The Byrna SD pepper spray kit. Learn more. $400. I mean, you can buy a real gun for $400. I just saw in Palmetto State Armory, they had a complete AR. I mean, you had to buy the upper and lower separately, but the total cost of both was like $330. It's what a country. I love America. Let's see. Zachary says, Andrew, if you have time, Steve forwarded my email to you regarding setting up an independent study with true double-blind testing for tool mark analysis. I would love your input. I think it's a great idea, Zachary. I can't remember if I saw that email or not. I get those kinds of inquiries a couple times a year. And I was, in a prior life, formally trained in study design, epidemiology, immunology, virology, all kinds of graduate level biological studies, including study design. But that was a long time ago, folks. That was almost 30 years ago. So I'm not sure I would really be that helpful. I would talk to a genuine academic. But to the extent I could be helpful, I'm glad to put in my 2 cents. Yeah, I wouldn't expect to get a grant for that kind of study. There's too many people who has their interest would be hurt by that kind of study. Joe says, comment, maybe Byrna changed their FAQ after yesterday's show. I don't know. I know they saw the FAQ because they tweeted me on Twitter. But I wouldn't speculate that they changed their website just for me. All right, folks, those are all the current comments on chat. So at this point, we're done with the Burna update. We're going to turn to the main part of today's show, which is waiting too long to act in self-defense. I have 2 videos illustrating the risks of waiting too long for self-defense. A big part of today's show is intended to be documentary. So you'll be watching the show either in the live stream now or in the replay, but only for law and self-defense members. We'll be cutting off the open access stream in just a moment. Plus, the members will also, in the blog post, get a transcript of today's show. It's really important to document your knowledge of these forms of specialized knowledge that might inform your use of force decision-making in the moment of crisis, because that's what makes your decision-making reasonable. And a jury won't know this stuff. So because they won't know it inherently, you need to be able to introduce this knowledge as evidence at trial. And you can only do that if you can prove to the court that you possessed the knowledge at the time you acted in self-defense. So documenting this kind of self-defense knowledge, specialized knowledge, expertise is critical. And that's one of the main purposes of the second half of today's show and these videos. So if you'd like to, if you are a law self-defense member, please don't go anywhere. I'm going to do a faux end of the show for the public access people, but you law self-defense members stay right where you are, and we'll come back for the members only portion of the show. If you're not yet a law self-defense member, now's your chance. lawofselfdefense.com/trial, 2-week trial, 99 cents, 200% money back guarantee. If you stay a member after that, it's still only about 30 cents a day, less than $10 a month. Do it now, and you can join us for the rest of the show over at lawofselfdefense.com. All right, folks, with that out of the way, I'm going to end the open access portion of today's show. If you are on YouTube, thanks for joining us so far, the first 34 minutes of the show, but your time with us is over if you're not a law self-defense member.